Good morning, all. Mary Bulger here, naturalist with Iowa County Conservation, and I want to welcome you to our second virtual Critters Live. So we'll be doing this Critters Live program every Monday morning at 10 a.m. This week we are going to be learning about a really neat critter, the Eastern Tiger Salamander, which is a native amphibian here in Iowa. So the salamander is a amphibian or a animal that is in a larger group of amphibians. And so amphibians have some pretty special characteristics that make them different from other animals. And in this group of amphibians, I have a few pictures here that can include things like frogs, like this little chorus frog here. It can include toads, like this American toad, very common here. And then it can also include the salamander, the Eastern Tiger Salamander, like this one here. So frogs, toads, and salamanders are included in that big group called amphibians. Now, amphibians have so those special characteristics that make them different from other animals. So we're going to talk about some of those today, and then I actually have a live salamander with me that I'm going to share a little bit with you. It is an educational animal, one of our animal ambassadors that lives here at Lake Iowa Nature Center. So amphibians are cold-blooded, and that means that they can't keep their body temperatures warm like mammals. Like people, we're warm-blooded. We can keep our temperature about 98.6 as long as we're healthy and not sick. And birds can also do that, but amphibians cannot. So to warm their bodies up, they have to go out in the warm, sunny weather. So you might see also reptiles, but amphibians out basking in the sun. So on rocks or logs or sidewalks or even roads, which aren't too safe for them. So they go out and they warm their bodies in the sun. That gives them a little bit of energy, and then they can move around a little bit and look for food. Likewise, when it is cold out, like during the winter time, we still get sunny. It's a nice sunny day today, but they can't go out because it is way too cold for them. So what they have to do is find a place to hibernate. So sleep, spend the winter in a warmer place than out on the surface. So they'll go underneath in the mud of ponds or streams. They'll find burrows in different places because it's too cold for them out here during the winter here in Iowa. Another characteristic about amphibians is that they go through something called metamorphosis, and that just means to change. We'll look at some pictures to kind of talk more in depth about metamorphosis here in a moment. But metamorphosis, you could also call it a life cycle. So with salamanders and toads and frogs, all amphibians, they start their lives out in a very special place. They started out in the water. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment more in depth. They also do not have claws. They have little round toes. Some of them are a little bit specialized for climbing different things, but they don't have claws. They don't have teeth. Some of them, like toads and frogs, have those long sticky tongues to eat their food. And that makes them quite different from lots of other animals. And they also have, most of them have moist skin. They can do something when they keep their skin moist called dermal respiration, which means when they're hibernating, they can use their skin to breathe a little bit. Dermal means skin, respiration means to breathe. So they can use their skin to breathe in different parts. Amphibians can. So let's talk a little bit about metamorphosis, the life cycle of a amphibian here. I have just a picture here, a pretty simple picture that we can kind of see the start here. So this is, of course, the adult salamander. Looks a lot like a lizard. We'll talk about what makes them different here in a moment. Adult salamanders will lay soft, squishy, jelly-like eggs. We'll look at a closer picture here in a moment. They will hatch into tadpoles, and then they'll grow. They'll start to change. They'll have those external gills here, and then they'll continue to grow, eat food and grow a little bit more, and then they're starting to look like that adult salamander and in this picture. And so this is metamorphosis. This is their life cycle. They go from an egg to a tadpole to the adult. Let's look at some more pictures of a little bit closer of some of those real live jelly, soft, squishy eggs. So these are, of course, laid underwater. They have to stay hydrated in order for them to hatch. But they're usually laid, salamander eggs anyway, in one big blob. And you can see there's little individual ones right here. Inside right here, this little black thing, that is the salamander tadpole about ready to come out. And there's lots of other ones right here too. So all amphibian eggs are laid in the water. And then they hatch into a tadpole. And this is a tadpole. We can also call it a larva or a baby salamander. You can see they look a little bit different than the frog tadpole. These are a little bit bigger, but they have these external gills. They have a small round body, a long squiggly tail to propel themselves in the water, and then they have these external gills. Salamanders do. They look kind of like fingers with little feathers on them. You can see this is a close-up of a salamander larva underneath the water. And with frogs and toads, they actually have internal gills, so we can't see them, but salamanders are a little bit different. They're pretty neat. So then they'll continue to grow and change, and they will become the adult salamander. Now, salamanders, they look a lot like lizards because they have those round heads, those long bodies, and those short legs and long tails. But what they are missing that lizards have, lizards are reptiles, they have scales in their bodies, but salamanders have that smooth, moist skin. So Iowa has 4 different kinds of salamanders. The tiger salamander, which we'll be seeing in just a moment. They have this really neat large salamander, which is called the mud puppy. The mud puppy looks like a big, huge lizard, and it's very large. Let me show you the size of it. So tip of my fingers to my elbow, that's how big the mud puppy can be. But they actually, when they're adults, they usually don't come out of the water. They're aquatic for their entire lives, unlike the other amphibians, other salamanders, that when they become an adult, they come out of the water and are out of the water, and they only return usually to the water for mating. So we also have a salamander here in Iowa called the smallmouth salamander. It looks a lot like the tiger salamander here. They're dark in color. They have some kind of white dots or markings on them, and they're about as long as my hand. So medium-sized salamander. And then we have another cute little salamander. This is called the blue spotted salamander, dark in color with blue spots all over its body. And they're pretty small, only about the size of my pinky, a very small salamander. And then one last, we call this one a newt, very closely related to the salamanders. So this is the spotted newt. They have kind of a light belly with some dark spots and then a dark brown upper body. They're about the same size as the tiger salamander here. So I'm going to bring our live tiger salamander out so you can meet him. Now, this is an educational animal that lives here at Lake Iowa Nature Center. We use it for education programs with school groups and public programs, in-person programs when we can do that. And so we have a special license and a permit to keep these animals, to use them for educational programs. And so let's meet our salamander. So you can see this salamander is actually very large. Out in the wild, you normally wouldn't see them this big, but he gets lots of food. He doesn't have to really work too terribly hard for his food. So it's a little bit bigger than you would find out in the wild. Let's look at some of the features or characteristics about the tiger salamander. I'm going to bring him a little bit closer so you can say hello. This is the Eastern Tiger Salamander. You can see that the head, I'll kind of turn it so you can look at it a little bit. It looks a lot like a frog head, and that is, or a toad head, and that's the typical amphibian head. They have a kind of a large round head. They have those big bulging eyes, you can see, that are sticking out right there. And they don't have any teeth inside. They have kind of what feels like gums. And because they don't have any teeth, most of their food has to be fairly soft. And if you take a look at those little round toes here, no claws, and they just use their feet and their toes, of course, for walking and moving around. But salamanders are pretty slow moving. They're really good hunters, though, and good predators. But they kind of hunt in a little bit of a different way. They wait for something to crawl or slither by. They hide in the leaves or in the soil or at the edge of their burrow, and then they ambush. They will jump out and grab with their mouth. Their mouth opens pretty wide, but it's very, very quick. Now with toads and frogs, they have their long sticky tongues, which they use to grab insects and different things like that. But the salamander doesn't quite have that long sticky tongue. It uses it just kind of to its mouth to grab. And you can see, looking at the colorations here, it has really great colorations, camouflage, kind of light on the belly, right there with some lighter splotches, and then dark overall with some different brown patterns, kind of splotches all over its body. And so after it becomes an adult, they go into the forest. That is the habitat that they like to live in. So they're down in the soil, in the mud, amongst the leaves. And so their coloration helps them camouflage or blend in really well with those areas. And in those areas, they will hide most of the time and rest during the day and come out and hunt and move around at night because they are nocturnal. And they rest during the daytime. And when they're hunting, they're looking for kind of medium-sized, soft-bodied animals. So worms, slugs, snails, beetles, anything really they can find crawling or moving around the ground. They will also eat carrion, so small dead animals that they can find. They only eat other animals. They only eat meat. They don't eat any kinds of plants. So that makes them carnivores. They're really good hunters and pretty ferocious predators for something that looks not so harmless right here. So now remember I said that they look a lot like lizards, and that's true. They have kind of a long body, a long tail, and those 4 legs, but they don't have those hard, soft scales or those hard, smooth scales. They have smooth, wet, moist skin. And that's what kind of allows them, or their habitat allows them for their skin to stay moist when they're down in the leaf litter in the soil. They do return to the water, though, when it is time to find a mate, and then the females will lay eggs in the water, and then they'll go back to the forest. Their young are kind of on their own. The parents don't provide any sort of care for their young. That's why they lay so many eggs, because there are lots of predators, insects, other animals in the water that like to eat salamander larvae or tadpoles. So now the really great thing about this Facebook Live is that you can ask me questions. So if you have any questions about the tiger salamander, please type those in the comments and I'll see it pop up on my screen here. I'd be happy to answer those for you. If you think something after our broadcast, put that in the comments too, and I'll do my best to monitor that and answer those for you. So I'm going to put this salamander back in his traveling container. If you've ever been here to Lake Iowa Nature Center, you've met our tiger salamander here or one of our other education animals. We use them quite a bit during the year, in a normal year, to do live animal programs and to teach people about native Iowa wildlife. So one thing that I want to share with you here that I'm going to put in the comments as an activity to do a little bit later, especially with little ones. This is going to be in a JPEG form. So this is a silhouette of a salamander, that long skinny body with those 4 legs and that long tail. I'm gonna put this in the comments, and what you can do with this is print it out and then try to draw a salamander, some camouflage pattern to either match something in your home or something out in your yard. So this is a fun little activity for kids to do, to get outside and to learn a little bit more about salamanders and camouflage, see if they can blend their salamander in with something in their yard or at home. I want to thank you guys very much for joining me today for our second Critters Live. We'll be back again next week. We're going to be talking a little bit about the snapping turtle, a neat reptile we have here that is native to Iowa. Also, I want to remind you that we're also doing another live series, Nature Crafts Live. And this week we will be being outside and be making something called ice bubbles. So let's hope for cold temperatures. It needs to be cold to make those ice bubbles. If you have any questions about the salamander, please put those in the comments. If you have any requests for future Critters Live, put those in the comments too, or you can email me at mbulger@co.iowa.ia.us. You can check this full video out on our Facebook page if you just caught a little bit of it, or go onto our Iowa County Conservation YouTube page and check the recording out there. Thanks very much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week. Get outside. It's sunny and beautiful today, and explore nature. Bye-bye.